Alright everybody, I have finally done it. Fatebreaker. Pretty nice seal, not gonna lie. This means I have all the Timelost weapons finally, which also means that I can now do a proper ranking of all the different weapons this season. So this is going to be a bit of a long video, but I'm going to go into what makes these weapons a 5 out of 5. I'm not going to like bore you with information you don't exactly need to know just to make the video longer so you watch longer and like I get more money, because it's not like that's going to happen. So yeah, alright, to kick off this list we have the CHROMA Rush. This is a 720 RPM kinetic auto rifle that was making massive waves in the Crucible at the start of this season. Everybody was losing it because they thought it was a 600 RPM, but nope, it's a 720, which is pretty neat. We have not had a good one of those in a while, or even, I don't even know if we've had any other ones. But the god roll for this would be Arrowhead Break, with accurized rounds or tactical mag, heating up or subsistence in the first slot, and then rampage or kill clip in the second slot. You do not want subsistence with kill clip though, as those perks don't exactly synergize together, and that would not be a god roll by any means. You'd kind of be shooting yourself in the foot because you wouldn't be able to fully take advantage of the other perk while using one at a time. So yeah, for Masterworks, you want either a stability or range masterwork for this because it is a fast-firing auto rifle. Next up, we have the Vision of Confluence, which is a precision frame, 180 rounds per minute scout rifle that is solar. You can get it from Vault of Glass, and you can get the Adept one or Timelost one from Mastervog. So this gun's awesome. I personally love it. I was so ecstatic that it made a return because some weapons did not make the cut when Vault of Glass came back, those being Praetorian's Foil, PRAEDYTH'S Timepiece, and Atheon's Epilogue. This one did though, and I absolutely loved using this thing back in D1. It was probably my most used weapon. The god roll for it in D2 is a little bit different though. You can get full bore and fluted barrel, which both of those are pretty great, ricochet rounds or high cal rounds in the ammunition slot, and then rewind rounds or surplus in the first slot, plus firefly and disruption break, or frenzy, or full auto trigger in the last slot. There are a lot of good perks in the second slot, I'm not gonna lie. Personally, I love Firefly and I love full auto trigger. Disruption break is really nice for PvE though, and frenzy is really nice for both PvE and PvP. The best masterworks that you can get for this are either range or stability, especially if you go for full auto trigger system. Next up, we have the Hung Jury SR4 and its Adept version. So the best perks that you can get on this would be fluted barrel or small bore in the first slot with tactical mag or accurized rounds. And then you could also go for steady rounds if you want to boost that stability a bit if you're playing PvP. And then in the first slot you want subsistence or surplus or rapid hit. That would make it pretty much a beast in PvE. Surplus is really good for PvP though as well. And then in the second slot you can get Firefly or explosive payload or box breathing. Firefly and explosive payload are definitely going to benefit you a bit more in PvE, but box breathing is just a menace in PvP. This is the same archetype as Vision of Confluence, but it is kinetic, so that's pretty cool. For PvE, I would recommend putting on Adept big ones for high-end content, and then for PvP I would recommend putting on either Adept range or Adept stability, and for Masterworks I would definitely say stability or range, honestly, because reload speed, handling, those are both pretty good. Next up we have the Loud Lullaby, and 120s may have gotten a nerf this season, but they're still pretty good. They're good in 6s, they're not so good in 3s, but that doesn't mean you can't have fun with it. I managed to drop like 20 or 30 kills, and I got a 4.0 using Palindrome and Loud Lullaby, so Loud Lullaby is definitely pretty nice. Hammer-forged rifling or full bore is what you're looking for the barrel. Tactical or extended magazine or accurized rounds are also quite nice. And then heating up and surplus in the first slot, or frenzy and kill clip in the second slot can make this thing really menacing. You definitely want to go for a range masterwork on this, or a reload speed masterwork. Next up, we have Fatebringer and Timelost Fatebringer. You can get the regular one from Vault of Glass, and you can get the Timelost one from Master Vault of Glass. You can only purchase more Timelost rolls at the end of Master Vogue, by the way, not at the end of normal Vogue, so yeah, that's pretty disappointing. However, if you find yourself lucky enough to get a God Roll Fatebringer, you won't need to do that. Full bore or hammer-forged rifling with accurized or tactical mag, and explosive payload or rewind rounds in the first slot, and then kill clip or frenzy or firefly or opening shot in the second round with a range masterwork. This thing is nasty in PvP and PvE. It's possibly the best gun in the game right now. I absolutely love this thing. And if you're rocking the Adept one, you definitely want to put on either Adept Icarus Grip or Adept Big One Spec, depending on if you're playing PvE or PvP. Next up, we have a 180 kinetic hand cannon, which is probably going to make a lot of people here a little bit confused with its inclusion on this list, but Survivor's Epitaph is fantastic and was a very, I don't know, I guess surprising treat this season to see a 180 hand cannon that feels really nice. This thing can roll with a ton of different perks, so it can be a bit hard to actually narrow down which ones you get and whether or not you're actually going to get a good one, but from what I've seen, the God Roll would probably be full bore with extended mag or ricochet rounds with outlaw or surplus in the first slot, or subsistence even if you want to use it in PvE, but I'd wait till next season for that, and then frenzy or snapshot in the second slot. If you want to get a pretty good masterwork for this, I would say go for either stability or range, because this thing definitely doesn't have a lot of range being a 180, but it still feels pretty damn good. Next up, we have Shayura's Wrath and the Adept Shayura's Wrath. So, Shayura's Wrath is the only new Trials weapon that was introduced this season, and this thing is a menace, but so are people who have been misleading everybody about the God Roll for this. It is not quick draw kill clip. What you want to get is small bore with hammer forged rifling or hammer forged rifling, and then accurized rounds or steady rounds with heating up and kill clip. The reason you want to go for steady rounds is because this thing can challenge auto rifles and any other SMG. It's got crazy range. It's really nice. You definitely want that nice little boost in stability to make it so that you can actually hit all your heads from farther away. It can definitely save your life sometimes. I've got one with heating up kill clip. Oh, it's so nice. You definitely want to go for a stability masterwork on this, and if not stability, I'd say range or reload speed would be your next best options. And then if you're rocking an Adept one, Adept Icarus is definitely the way to go. Next up, we have Found Verdict, the only aggressive frame shotgun, don't tell Bungie, seemingly unaffected by the nerf to aggressives. The God Roll for this thing would definitely be rifled barrel or full choke and accurized or assault mag with slide shot or surplus or full auto in the first slot, with frenzy, vorpal, or opening shot in the second. So for threes, I would definitely say go for accurized with slide shot or surplus, and then vorpal or opening shot. For masterworks, I would definitely say go for range. Stability wouldn't be bad if you've got one with full auto on it. Reload speed wouldn't be bad either, or handling if you want to try and make your own little boneless quick draw build. If you have the Timelost version of this, which I know not a lot of people do, I would definitely recommend throwing on Adept Icarus. That'll make this thing a menace for sure in the Crucible. Next up, we have the Compass Rose Precision Frame Non-Slug Shotgun from Solstice of Heroes this year. The God Roll for this fantastic looking shotgun is full choke or rifled barrel with accurized or assault mag, surplus or quick draw in the first slot, and then snapshot or trench barrel or vorpal in the last slot. Now vorpal can be swapped with trench barrel pretty easily because some people like to use these shotguns in PvE, and that can help with bosses, majors, etc. And some people like to use their shotguns to shut down supers. I have shut down quite a few supers with this thing, and it feels so good. All you got to do is just aim for their head and you're chilling. It's not a very hard shotgun to get used to. It is a little bit weird if you're expecting it to be a slug. I can understand some people not liking the feeling that way, but I would definitely just say don't overlook this thing and make sure to give it a shot because it's just gorgeous. The sights are a bit hard to get used to, but very nice shotgun, and I hope Bungie makes more weapons that look like this in the future. Next up, we have the Ignition Code, my favorite weapon this season that did not return from D1. This thing is basically Mountaintop 2.0, and it can roll with basically everything you could possibly want in a grenade launcher. The absolute God Roll for this thing is quick launch or hard launch with blinding and spike grenades with slide shot in the first slot, and Vorpal in the second slot. Now, if you're extremely lucky, you can go and do those expunge missions on the corrupted difficulty and open those corrupted chests. If you do that 3 times a week on each character, you have a chance at getting a new Splicer weapon that has an extra slot for the second perk that you can swap to, so you could also have Frenzy in that last slot as well. So basically, if you're incredibly lucky, you can get a quick launch, hard launch, blinding and spike with slide shot, and Vorpal and Frenzy ignition code. And that thing is just insane. You definitely want a velocity masterwork, because blast radius isn't going to be much good if you're using blinding nades, and for spike nades, you don't want blast radius, you want velocity, so definitely go for that. Plus, reload speed would just be so stupid given that you've got slide shot. Next up, we've got the plug 1.1, which a lot of PvE people were extremely upset about when it got added to the Adept weapon pool from Nightfalls, because why would we need this? We have Null Composure. This thing is a beast, though. It's a high impact frame, which Null Composure is not. That's a rapid fire frame. And the god roll for plug 1.1 would have to be Arrowhead Break or Chambered Compensator with liquid coils or particle repeater, and heating up or under pressure in the first slot with Kickstart or Cornered, or even Reservoir Burst if you actually want to use it in PvE in the last slot. I have yet to get one with Cornered and try it out, but I have heard nothing but great things about it. All my PvP friends that have one say that with under pressure, definitely the PvP roll that you want. The best masterwork that you can get for this is definitely Stability, and if you had the Adept one, I would definitely recommend throwing on either Adept Counterbalance or Adept Stability. Next up, we have the Null Composure, which you already know what this comes with if you have it. The best roll to use is definitely heating up in high impact reserves for both PvP and PvE, because in PvE, you will definitely be using this for DPS on bosses. I know I use it every time we do Atheon. I do it when we do Templar, when we're not on Master Vogue, because otherwise I'm running Relic, but great weapon. Highly recommend putting on either boss spec or counterbalance stock if you're using it. Next up, we have 3 new sniper rifles introduced this season, and I believe they are all in different archetypes. First up, we've got the PRAEDYTH'S Revenge and its Timelost variant from the Vault of Glass, which for this one, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it can roll with some insane stuff for snipers. It's really good for PvE and PvP. I would highly recommend going for one with fluted barrel or full bore with extended mag, or accurized rounds with rewind rounds or quick draw in the first slot, and frenzy, high impact reserves, or opening shot in the final slot. You definitely want that extended mag with rewind rounds and high impact reserves for PvE, but if you're in PvP, I'm telling you, you need that accurized rounds with quick draw and opening shot, or even frenzy on it. It's so nice. And if you get the Timelost one, throw on either Adept targeting or even Adept range, that thing will be nasty in the Crucible. Now, you definitely want a range masterwork for this thing. However, I could see a stability one coming in handy if you're using it for PvE, but if you're using it for PvP, it's gotta be range. Next up, we've got the UZUME, which does have an Adept version as well. I know a lot of PvE people were not too enthused about this one. This one definitely seems like a more PvP-oriented weapon, as it's another Omelon sniper, which I was a massive fan of back in Destiny 1. This thing feels so good to use. The god roll for this would be fluted barrel or extended barrel with tactical mag or accurized rounds, and snapshot, triple tap, or clown cartridge in the first slot. You know which ones of those are PvE, I don't even have to tell you. And then explosive payload, Vorpal, or high impact reserves in the last slot. This thing feels so nice, it's so snappy, the scope is great. Next up, we've got the occluded Finality, which a lot of people may be surprised by its inclusion on here because, oh my god, that scope, but here's the thing a lot of people are overlooking. This thing hits like a truck, and it feels so nice to use. The god roll for this thing, and the first perk is not up for debate, is fluted barrel and full bore with ricochet rounds, and then snapshot sights, because it makes this thing feel so good. And then opening shot or Vorpal or Iron Reach in the final slot. Iron Reach gives this thing ridiculous range, absolutely maxed, and then opening shot definitely makes this thing feel nicer right when you open an encounter with that. Vorpal weapon is good for shutting down supers. And yeah, that's pretty much it. As far as masterworks, I'd say you want a handling masterwork, and then maybe targeting adjuster for the mod would be pretty good. Next up, we have the 3 class-specific swords that dropped this season. You all already know how big of a Crown Splitter fan I am. All you gotta do is get Jagged Edge, Thresh, and Vorpal on there, and this thing is a banger. Combine that with Lucent Blade and then Warm Mind's Decree, so you make Warm Mind cells on every kill. Lucent Blade so it does more damage. Whew, this thing is nasty. Next up, we've got Quick Fang for the Hunter, which just throw on Jagged Edge with Relentless Strikes and Assassin's Blade, and this thing is so fun to use. You get to Naruto run all over the world, or all over the galaxy, I guess, and just killing shit with it. It feels so nice. Next up, we have Memory Interdict, which is a grenade launcher. It's a heavy one that can roll spike nades, which is nuts. I don't think we've ever seen that before, but at least not with impulse amplifier and chain reaction. This thing is so crazy because it can be good for Crucible, it can be good for PvE. The absolute god roll for this thing would be hard launch, spike grenades, impulse amplifier, and either chain reaction or elemental capacitor. And you definitely want a velocity masterwork on this thing if you're using it in PvE. If not, though, I would say go for that handling one, and then definitely go for elemental capacitor if you're using it for PvP too, just so you can get that swap to be insanely quick. As far as mods go, I don't really know what I'd recommend for this. I mean, for PvE, definitely boss spec or major spec, but for PvP, I don't even use heavy grenade launchers that much in it. I mean, I've got the clip here, but I don't know what would be best. Maybe Icarus Grip. As far as rocket launchers this season go, we have the Heathen Vengeance and its Timelost variant. Hard launch, impact casing, overflow, and either Vorpal or lasting impression in the last slot. Insanely good. If you could get yourself either a velocity masterwork or a blast radius masterwork, this thing is going to be perfect. Throw on Adept Big One spec, and oh my god, it's going to be great. Definitely not a PvP weapon, but very fun to use in PvE. And then the last weapon archetype that I have not covered yet would be machine guns, and there are two very nice ones introduced this season. The Shattered Cipher, which I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, what the fuck, isn't that boring one from the Battle Pass? And yes, the Shattered Cipher is a 900 RPM Void machine gun. Now, people might be thinking, well, isn't the next one you're going to mention Void? And yes, it is, but this one's 900 RPM. This thing fires like Recluse. It feels nice. It's pretty stable for its fire rate too, which is crazy. The god roll for this thing, the one that I've been having the most fun with, would have to be Fluted or Extended Barrel, with Extended Barrel or Accurized, and then in the first slot you want Heating Up. Field Prep wouldn't be bad either, and then in the second slot you want Rampage or Snapshot. This thing can be really good in PvE and PvP. It fires so fast. In PvP, your enemies don't really expect you to be using something that most people think is really shitty, but when you catch them off guard with it, it's insane. You just dump your magazine so fast, because the magazine only has 45 in it, so you just unload all of that into like 2 or 3 enemies and they're dead. It's such a good feeling. It's more of a fun weapon than like a top tier thing. I would never take this into 3s or in Grandmasters or anything, but definitely something worth checking out before the season ends. The last heavy machine gun that we're going to be checking out, though, is possibly my favorite heavy weapon introduced all season, and that's the Timelost and normal corrective measure. Oh, by the way, on Shattered Cipher, you definitely want a stability masterwork. I know that probably goes without saying, but yeah. But on the corrective measure, I would definitely say you want a fluted barrel or full bore with tactical mag or accurized rounds. And in the first slot, you want either subsistence or rewind rounds, and in the second, you want Firefly or high impact reserves. This thing is a beast. It shreds everything. Adds, bosses, guardians. Throw on Big One spec for PvE, and this thing will shred anyone faster than you would probably be able to imagine. It's better than the Adept Swarm was last season. It is nuts, and I love this thing. If you happen to get the Timelost one, you can definitely take advantage of more mods in Crucible as well, like Adept Stability or Adept Icarus Grip, and it's definitely fun to use in there as well. Now, some honorable mentions are the third class-specific sword I didn't mention. This was going to be on the list originally until I found out I was wrong and it can't roll Vorpal, but Eternity's Edge with Jagged Edge, or Hungry Edge, Relentless Strikes and Assassin Blade, which, yeah, that's what you can get on Quick Fang too. The actual pretty good honorable mention would have to be Empty Vessel, which is a Vanguard grenade launcher, so it is going to be a little bit hard to farm, especially since it's got a decently deep perk pool, but the god roll for this thing is Volatile or Hard Launch with Spike and Blinding Nades, or I guess you could do one or the other, and then Auto-Loading Holster or Quick Draw with Vorpal, Demolitionist, or Disruption Break. This thing could replace your Salvagers if you're on Atheon and you're using Starfire Protocol, by the way, to all my Warlocks out there. Because Quick Draw with Demolitionist and spike nades with hard launch. Sheesh, that'll be fun. But yeah, that'll do it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy. Hope you guys found something informative. Yeah. See you guys when I come up with a better idea for a video. That's probably not going to happen, though. I don't know how to end these things.